priests to a nation of the most jealously nursed priestly revengefulness. It was the Jews who, in opposition to the aristocratic equation, and then in parentheses, good equals aristocratic equals beautiful equals happy equals loved by the gods, dared with a terrifying logic to suggest the contrary equation, and indeed to maintain with the teeth of the most profound hatred, the hatred of weakness, this contrary equation, namely, the wretched are alone the good, the poor, the weak, the lowly are alone the good, the suffering, the needy, the sick, the loathsome are the only ones who are good, the only ones who are blessed. For them alone is salvation. But you, on the other hand, you aristocrats, you men of power, you are to all eternity the evil, the horrible, the insatiate, the godless. Eternally you also shall you be unblessed, be cursed, damned. We know who it was who reaped the heritage of the Jewish transvaluation. Of course, he means Christians, the Christian church with the priests. Okay? So there you are, 19th century. Marx also influenced by evolutionary theory. Marx conceives of society as in a process of evolution, which will lead eventually to a classless society. Remember, again, he was so impressed with Darwin. I mean, Marx published his work, The Capital, about 9 or 10 years after Darwin's The Origin of Species, which was published in the 1850s, okay? In the 1850s. And 1859. And, if I remember correctly. And Marx asked Darwin if he could dedicate his work, The Capital, to him. He was so impressed because he felt evolutionary theory could be used as an ideological instrument of materialism and atheism. And it has been seen as such also by many other people. So for Marx, very influenced by evolutionary theory, religion is a conspiracy of the powerful to control the weak. For Nietzsche, it's a conspiracy, a very smart conspiracy of the weak to control the masters, the natural masters of the world. Of course, Hitler loved Nietzsche. Nietzsche's sister, although while Nietzsche was alive, he didn't have a good relationship with his sister, but still, his sister, after he died, became really good friends with Hitler too. And so here we see, by the way, in the case of Nietzsche, this. Remember, there is these two parallel lines of thought going side by side in the Western tradition. The ancient Greek way of looking at things, and the Christian. Remember when we talked about virtue, how we said that virtue, for Aristotle, 4th century BC, is the mean in between two extremes, and that you become virtuous through practice and repetition and discipline. But for Christianity, it's an all or nothing, that Jesus tells his followers, sell everything you have, give it to the poor and follow me. For Aristotle, it would be excess. But for Christians, or for Christian thinkers, Aristotle's notion of virtue would be lukewarm virtue at best. Well, the same happens with the relationship between ethics and aesthetics, the good and the beautiful. Two different conceptions in Christianity and in ancient Greek thought. In ancient Greek thought, specifically Platonic thought, physical beauty places you closer to God, to the divine. Physical beauty is simply an echo of the divine. It's a reflection of the divine. The more beautiful, the more attractive a person is, the closer that person is to God, because his beauty or her beauty reflects true, transcendent, divine beauty. Not so in Christianity. In Christianity, there is this opposition at the very root of the Christian myth, if you wish, which is an opposition between beauty and physical beauty and goodness. And we see that in the myth of Lucifer. Who was Lucifer? The angel of light, right? The most beautiful angel. And he was also the sinful angel, the arrogant, the one who broke up with God. Okay? So Nietzsche follows very much the Greek line of thought in this particular issue. So the arrogant are, the masters are arrogant, they're beautiful, they're superior physically. And he despises Christianity as the religion of the weak, the conspiracy of the weak. And he admired the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, except one. He did not admire Socrates. Socrates didn't think of masters and slaves. It was Aristotle who lived later. And so Nietzsche really despised Socrates, because Socrates would have been pretty compatible with some Christian ideas, perhaps. But you know why he despised Socrates? I mean, if you are to think that physical beauty makes you superior, politically speaking, where would you end up? With what ideology? Say you think that the white race is the most beautiful and perfect, blah, 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 you would end up with Nazism, right? Nazism. Well, Nietzsche loved the Greeks, he despised Christianity, and so did Hitler. Hitler had a plan to abolish the Christian churches altogether, okay? And Nietzsche and Hitler admired the Greeks as well. And Nazism, Nazi ideology, was very influenced by evolutionary theory as well. You may have heard of eugenics and social Darwinism. I mean, once people thought they had discovered in the late 19th century, in the first part of the 20th century, how society works, how nature works, how does it work? Evolutionary theory has finally found out. It functions, it works, it progresses, it advances by eliminating the weak and letting the strong procreate. Then it seemed to some progressive, quote, quote, intellectuals that our rational duty must be to cooperate with nature to advance the human race. And there you have something called eugenics, which became very prominent in the first part of the 20th century. Eugenics. This U means good, genics is like with genes, so good birth, eugenics. So you would pair those most healthy, most beautiful, those superior individuals so as to procreate and have also superior offsprings, and that way you're cooperating with nature. This led to negative eugenics, putting people who had handicaps or any kind of deformities in hospices and letting them die pretty much, or sterilizing them. People with mental retardation, for example, were sterilized and prevented from procreating. And that wasn't done just by the Nazis. That was done by every country in the Western world, almost, including the US. And up until recently, they were doing stuff like that in Sweden, okay? And not so long ago, even in the US, they were experimenting on African-American men. There were these horrendous experiments on syphilis. And so this idea of eugenics is part of what is called social Darwinism. We know how nature proceeds. We have to cooperate with nature. Hitler would just went one step further. He did positive eugenics. He would just simply eliminate, kill those individuals he conceptualized as inferior or weaker, and even if it was whole groups of people. Right? But we need to remember this. And then I told you that Nietzsche loved the Greeks, but he despised one of them, Socrates. He despised Socrates. You know why? Because he was ugly. Socrates was ugly. And he has actually a text. You can find it on the internet just by typing Nietzsche, the problem with Socrates. What was the problem with Socrates? He was ugly. How can you believe such an ugly person? You know, his position is, how can you trust what he's saying? He's so ugly. He can't be possibly right. Well, I mean, if you think that beauty makes you better, it'll make you more perfect, closer to God, then an ugly person has everything to lose.